So in another video, we saw how PHP might be used together with other web technologies within the context of the web. But in this video, we're going to look at PHP as a language in itself. So it has its origins over 20 years ago, and certainly it has become one of the common languages used for building websites. Oh, by the way, I'm using some slides from Sebesta, which is based on Sebesta's book, Programming the World Wide Web. You can also read his chapter. So PHP is open source, it's been around for a while, and it is a common language used for server-side processing for websites, for handling form information, as we will see, for file processing, for database access, and so on. So it is a server-side scripting language. It's actually a programming language in itself, which can be used outside of the web. But because it's been used so much for web applications, it's become kind of associated with the web. So the PHP processor has two modes. You can copy, if it sees HTML code, as we see in another video, any HTML code is just copied out. If it is PHP code, it's then actually executed line by line. Now PHP syntax is quite similar to JavaScript, so don't get confused. And it's dynamically typed just like JavaScript, so you don't have to declare the types of variables or arguments in functions. The PHP interpreter can try and infer what the type is. It's purely interpreted, so you can execute line by line basically. Instead of being compiled, like in other programming languages, it is interpreted. And PHP code can be specified in an HTML document internally or externally. So internally, and this is the main mode that we'll use, you enclose it within those start and end tags as shown there. So within this start and end tags. Or you can include PHP code located in a separate file using this include PHP function. Now if the file has PHP, the PHP must be within those tags. Now every variable name begins with a $sign, so this is pretty unique for PHP. Right? Any variables, unlike in JavaScript, unlike in Java, any names of variables, if it's going to be a variable, it has to be preceded with a $sign. You can include comments within your PHP code in a typical way, just like Java and C. There are primitive expressions as well, operations, and you have now, just like you have Java, you have now, and there's a unset function, a special PHP function that sets a variable to the now value. There is an isSet function to determine whether a value has been assigned to a variable, or if no value has been assigned, the value is now. Okay, and there are error codes as well. Error reporting 15 prevents PHP from using unbound variables. So this is a special PHP function you call to tell PHP not to use unbound variables. And PHP has many predefined variables, including environment variables of the operating system. There are also primitive types, and these primitive types are quite typical. You see these similar types in JavaScript as well. And you also can have arrays and object type, just like in JavaScript, and you have also resource and now types, special types, especially now. Integer and double are like those of other languages. Strings, and there's a good string library for string processing using PHP as well. Characters are single bytes, and string literals use single or double quotes. Embedded variables are not interpolated. Embedded escape sequences are not recognized. So just if this is a bit confusing, don't worry about it. But double quoted string literals are interpolated, and embedded sequences are recognized. So this is just a feature of the language. And if you have double quotes within double quotes, for instance, just like in JavaScript, you should also use the backslash to signify that this is a quote within another quote. Boolean values are true or false, and those values are equivalent to false, or others are true. You have also arithmetic operations, user operators, quite typical in any programming language. Integer operation that results in an overflow produces a value of type double, that is. You also have the modulus operator and a whole bunch of arithmetic functions and string functions. Now in JavaScript, the operator to concatenate two strings is the plus operator, but in PHP it is the dot operator or full stop or period operator. You can also look for the fourth character because it starts from 0, 0, 1, 2, 3. You can look for the fourth character of a string using indexing, like index notation. And here's a whole bunch of string functions. You'll find that in the programming language C. String to numeric, some are implicit, some are explicit conversions. You can also do explicit conversions using casting, just like in some other programming languages, but we won't worry too much about some of these here. Okay, as we have seen in another video, the output from PHP script is really HTML, and it is the HTML that's sent back to the browser. And you can use echo, or you can use print or printf. These are very similar statements. In the example shown in another video, we use echo instead of print, but they have the same function. Printf will include a new line character after the string, just like in C. Control expressions, they are comparison operators. There are also operators which are typical control structures that we see in other languages, in C or in Java. And then you also have switch statements with break, continue, and here's an example. So it looks a bit strange at first, but you can see that this is the start of a PHP block, and then you can see that this is an end of a PHP block. So these lines of code are, these 1, 2, 3, 4 lines of code are PHP code, and then suddenly you have a bit of HTML code, and then you have PHP code. Right? So it seems a bit strange, but what it is saying here is that you're assigning 7 into variable A, the value 7 to variable B, comparing the two, and in this case they will be the same. If they are the same, you do some multiplication, and then you update the variable A, and you then proceed to output these statements. Remember, this looks like normal HTML, so this is just output. So these lines are just simply copied out, and then you close that statement. Arrays, you can have arrays in PHP, creating arrays using this array construct. So this is a special array function. You can also access key value pairs using equal, greater than. Here's an example. You can make list. This variable list is actually an array of key value pairs. So you have the key and a value, key and a value, key and a value. So it's like a dictionary, if you like. If a key is omitted, they'll be integer, then there are default key values as well. So these are some details which we might not need to worry about here. And you can have keys which are strings instead of numbers, or mix of strings and numbers as well as keys. Here's an array of numbers, and then array of numbers and key value pairs. So heterogeneous types is possible. Array of strings, and you can dereference using square brackets. You can also get all the keys of an array of key value pairs, or all the values of the array of key value pairs, extracting just the keys or extracting just the values. You can check whether a key exists within a given array, and you can also delete an array using the unset operator. Even You can also delete just one element of the array. You can check whether the type of variable $list is an array. You can also check if the element 17 is within the array $list. You can use size of function to return the number of elements. You can use explode to create an array with the value of the words from string, implode, and so on. So $colors here is an array, and you're stepping through each element of the array using the each function. Previous function moves current backwards, so this is used to navigate within the array. So it may seem a bit confusing at the moment, right? Some of the operations here, but you can always check by using the website called php.net. Okay, so if you go to this website called php.net, you can look things up. So if you wanted to find out more about the for each statement, there you go. Just search for each, and there's lots of examples and explanations for it. Or if you wanted to look for information about the header function, which we talked about earlier, here is the header function, which is used to generate the headers, and there are some comments about its usage and examples and so on. So this is a useful resource to come back to often. In particular, for each is something that you might use quite common in your PHP code. So it steps through every element of an array. So $colors in this example is an array, and $color is an element of the array. So as each time it goes through a loop, $color will be assigned to a different element from the array colors. So it's a way of stepping through all the elements of the array $colors. You can also step through keys and values if colors happens to be an array of key values. And this is pretty useful, especially on the server side when you need to do processing attributes and values. So remember, when you send a form using a post or get request, you're sending a collection of key value pairs to the server, and you might be sending a collection of key value pairs to a PHP script on the server side, and to process the key value pairs you can use code like this. So very convenient, and you will see examples of that. You can sort. There's a built-in sort function to sort the elements of an array depending on what the type is. So you can sort in reverse order or according to a particular key. It's quite some sophisticated operations. Some you will never need to use in this subject, but it's given here for completion's sake. Okay, functions. You notice that this is very similar to JavaScript. If you need to declare a function, you precede the name of the function with the function keyword, and this is quite similar to JavaScript. So don't confuse the two. Right? The syntax of a function in JavaScript and JavaScript function is similar because it has the function keyword, but one is in PHP, the other is in JavaScript. And there are some general characteristics about functions explained here. Parameters. There are some properties about parameters, but they are, instead of this sophisticated set of rules, just try and match the number of actual parameters with the number of parameters that the function requires, and you'll be fine. You can also pass values by reference using the ampersand operator. Returning values, you can use the return keyword, and if a function returns a reference, the name of the function must have an ampersand. So instead of returning a value, you return a reference to the value. But if you're unclear about references, don't worry about this for this subject. You can also access variables that are outside of a function using the keyword global, but that's not advisable. You can also access static variables. Again, you don't really need to use it in this subject. You can use regular expression pattern matching in JavaScript. In PHP, a similar functionality is available as well. Okay, so you can, one of the main uses of PHP we have is to process the form inputs from the browser. So imagine on the client side in the browser, the user fills in a form. There is a whole bunch of attributes and values or key value pairs. They are then sent to the server side for processing. And normally it is posted or sent to a PHP script, a .php program that is processing the form inputs from the user. We'll look at examples of that. So whether it's get or post method, you can process it in a similar way. So in fact, the collection of attributes that's coming from the client, the collection of information is actually stored in a $get variable or $_post variable, depending on whether the get method or post method is used. So this example from the book, from Sebastia's book, Programming the World Wide Web, but we'll look at our own examples in this subject. Cookies, you can also do cookies using PHP, though in this subject we wouldn't worry about accessing or setting cookies from the server side. So you notice that you can access cookies from within JavaScript. There is a local access in the sense that you are accessing cookies managed by the browser locally, but a server-side program can also update cookies on the browser by using the set cookie function. So you can write a PHP program that updates the cookies on the client side by using the set cookie function. So when you call the set cookie function, it basically sends a set cookie command from the server to the browser and updates the cookie on the browser side. Just to know that that's possible. For example, when you're implementing shopping baskets and so on. Though you probably won't need it for this subject. And you can access cookies using the $_cookies array. Session tracking is something that we'll come back to in more detail in examples. And one important use of sessions is to record the fact that the user has logged in successfully to a website. And you want to differentiate two cases, whether the user has successfully logged in which case the user is now within a session. And you do this by using this session start function. So this is a quick overview. We'll look into examples of the use of session start and other such PHP functions elsewhere. And session management means to keep track of logging in and logging out, as is typical in many websites. You register, you log in, you log out. Okay, remember that I mentioned one of the use of PHP is to use it to handle form inputs. That is, if the user fills in a form like this example here, the inputs to the form are then posted to a PHP script on the server side, and the PHP script will then process the form inputs. So let's try. So SWLKE, hello, email. So let's say I just enter some email here. So let's say I just enter some email here. I select some of the options here, and I submit this information. And notice that that information has been submitted to a PHP script, which then reflects back the information that I entered. So this PHP script is not doing anything. It's simply echoing or sending me back what I typed in just now, the attributes and the values. So if you go back to this form and you look at the page source, you notice that it is just normal HTML page with a form here, and the method is post. So whatever I type into this browser will be posted to the server, and where would it be posted to? In fact, it's going to be posted to a program called test.php that's sitting in this directory, in the default directory on the server side. Okay, so I'm going to show you the code side by side. And so if you look at this form here, when the user types in the attributes and values, it's then sent using the post method to a program called test.php. And on the right hand side, this is what test.php looks like. Right, so this is test.php. So anything that's typed in a browser, because the action is specified as pointing to this particular program, anything that is typed in here, the set of attributes and values, for example, the attribute is username and the value is slope, the password, and say if I type in hello here as a password, and the value is s.look@latrobe.edu.au, that's the value for the attribute email and so on. Right? And here are my selections, which is for the attribute useful. Understandability that I select here is for the attribute understandability, and that information, when I click submit, is posted to this particular program, which is the program called test.php residing on the server. And this is a program that's going to receive all the attributes and values or the form details, and it's a PHP file, which means that the server will take this and start to process it. In other words, what it is trying to do is that as it processes this, it's generating an output to be sent back to the client in response to that submission. So what's the output that's going to be generated? So it's going to generate all of this. So it's going to process this. And as we have seen, all this is normal HTML code. So it will just be copied out. And then it sees a block of PHP code here. And then it generates this, echoes that response. And then it steps through the set of attributes and values using this variable called $_post. Each element of a $_post is actually a key value pair. So for instance, username and SLOKE. So the key here, $key will have the value username, and $value will have the value SLOKE, for instance. And it steps through each of the key value pairs. So in the first iteration, $key will be username, and $value will be SLOKE. And then what it does is it checks whether this is an array or not. So in this case, if it's just SLOKE, it is not an array, and all it does is to echo it back. So that it will output $key, which is actually username, and then the $value will be SLOKE, and then it will then, this is the for loop, it will then go on to the next. In the next iteration, it will look at the next key value pair, and the next key value pair is password with, and I typed in hello here. So $key will be password, $value will be hello, and then is hello an array? No, it's not. Then it comes in here, it will echo password, $key, password equals to hello, and then it goes on to the next iteration, fetches the third key value pair, and the third key value pair is, the key here is email, and the value is s.loke@latrobe.edu.au, and then is this an array? This email is not an array. Then it comes here, it will echo $key, in this case is email equals to $value, in which case is that. And then when it gets to the next one, notice that the next one is a checkbox type, and it is an array. So the $key here is useful, and the $value here is an array of information that are submitted. So it's an array containing a, sum, and grade. So is it an array? Yes, it's an array, and then it knows it is a checkbox selection because the type of $value is an array, and then it will step through every element of the array and echo that. So you will go through each of the choices and fetch the value of it and then print it out. And that's what you see, right? It will print out A, sum, and grade. And then the next one is a selection, right? So, and in this case, only one item is selected. It will just print out whatever that's selected. So if I click submit, you can see the output generated by this particular program. And there we go. Right? So you notice that this is the PHP program here. And this is the output that is sent back to the client. So this is the output that is generated by executing this PHP program. So you notice that all these lines are normal HTML, so it's just copied out here, and then you have response, echoing a response, and that generates that. And the next line then echoes $server and then HTTP user agent. So and this contains information that is sent by the browser or the user agent. The user agent is a technical term for a browser. So it contains information about the user agent or about the browser that is sent from the browser to the server. So it knows that the browser is of type Mozilla. In this case, it's a Safari browser, so it's of type Mozilla. And I was running the browser on a Macintosh machine and so on. Right? So all the information is sent to the server. And your PHP code can retrieve it using the $_server variable. And then what you have is the bit of HTML that is generated by this PHP code. Right? So you get, remember the first key value pair in $_post is the username and the value of the username. So you get username equals to SLOK generated by this line. And the next is a password. $key is a password and $value is hello. That's the next key value pair, which is then seen here. Password equals to hello with the BR. The third key value pair is my email followed by the email address, which is actually this line of code which is generated by the third time this echo statement is executed. And then after that comes the checkbox selections. You notice that this is, it prints out this checkbox selections and then :BR is actually printed out here. And then followed by space and then the values. Right? And so you get a space here and then a value, space, value, space, and value, right? Which is generated here. And then finally understandability equals difficult, which is the selection, and so on. So the only $value that is of type array here is the checkbox, because you can have multiple values. There's an array of values there. Okay, so this is the rendering of the HTML page generated by executing this PHP code on the server.